The fortress world of Kalos, home of the Vakari, stood as a symbol of defiance for centuries. Its towering citadels and impenetrable defense grids, powered by the Vakari's mastery over plasma technology, had weathered countless wars. The Vakari themselves were renowned for their honor-bound culture, defenders of the weak, protectors of the galaxy. Yet now, they faced a threat unlike any other, one not from a faceless enemy, but from those they had called allies. The Xanthus Empire, a militaristic race known for their brutal expansion, launched a full-scale invasion of Kalos. What started as skirmishes at the edges of Vakari space had escalated into a massive offensive, with Xanthus warships bombarding the Vakari fortifications from orbit. Kalos cities burned, and yet the Galactic Federation, the entity the Vakari had helped build and protect, remained silent. Inside the high command citadel of Kalos, the Vakari Council convened. Commander Arvon, the leader of the Vakari Defense Forces, stood before his fellow council members, his expression grim. "Our calls for aid have gone unanswered," Arvon said, his voice echoing in the chamber. His weathered face showed the burden of countless battles, but never before had he looked so defeated. "The Galactic Federation has abandoned us." Gasps of disbelief swept through the room. Counselor Rolliff, a diplomat known for his calm, stood abruptly. "Impossible. The Federation would not leave us to die. We have stood by their side for centuries." Arvon clenched his fists, frustration simmering beneath his controlled exterior. "The Xanthus are at our gates, and the Federation's fleets have not moved. We have been betrayed." The realization dawned slowly among the council members. Once proud allies had turned their backs on the Vakari, leaving them to fend for themselves in a war they could not win alone. Despair began to creep into their hearts. Even the Vakari's famed warriors could not hold out much longer against the relentless Xanthus onslaught. Their defenses, though formidable, were faltering under the sustained bombardment. Outside the citadel, the sky was streaked with fire as Xanthus ships rained destruction upon Kalos. The Vakari's legendary plasma shields, once thought indestructible, flickered under the intensity of the attack. It was only a matter of time before they failed completely. As the council debated their grim fate, an unexpected signal cut through the Xanthus jamming frequencies. It was a message, one originating from a distant corner of the galaxy, from a species new to the intergalactic stage. On Earth, within the unified Earth Command Center, the message from Kalos played before the top military officials. The Vakari's call for aid, ignored by the rest of the galaxy, had reached them. Captain Tom Hales stood at attention, watching the desperation in the Vakari commander's eyes as he repeated his plea. Hales's square jaw tightened as he realized the full scope of the betrayal. "The Federation left them to die," Hales said, turning to the gathered military leaders. "They expect the Vakari to be wiped out." A murmur spread through the room. Earth was still new to interstellar politics, but the Vakari had always been spoken of with reverence as noble protectors. It didn't sit well with Hales that the very same Federation that Earth was preparing to join had chosen silence in the face of genocide. "They once protected Earth from the Xanthus," Hales continued. "Without the Vakari, we wouldn't have survived our first contact. And now, we're supposed to stand by and watch them fall." The Earth leadership debated. The unified Earth fleet had never faced an enemy like the Xanthus, and many believed it was too early for humanity to get involved in a galactic war. But Hales's voice rang clear above the hesitation. "If we do nothing, we're no better than the Federation. We owe them this fight." After a tense silence, the decision was made. Earth would intervene. A fleet of warships and transport vessels was hastily mobilized. Humanity, though inexperienced in comparison to the ancient races of the galaxy, had one thing the others lacked: a willingness to fight for their allies, no matter the cost. Hales was placed in command of the operation. As he stood aboard his flagship, the UNS Resolute, he addressed his men. Colonel Ryan Maddox, his second-in-command, joined him on the bridge. "We're not just fighting for the Vakari," Hales said. "We're fighting to show the galaxy who we are. They left the Vakari for dead, but we won't. We never abandon those who stand with us. Maddox nodded. They'll know what humanity stands for by the time we're done. The fleet launched from Earth, engines blazing as they sped toward Kalos. Though outnumbered and outgunned, the resolve in Hales's eyes reflected the iron will of humanity. They would not let the Vakari perish, not while they still had the strength to fight. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace above Kalos, greeted by a scene of devastation. The once great Vakari world was under siege. Xanthus warships, like predatory beasts, circled the planet, launching relentless orbital strikes on the crumbling fortifications below. Smoke rose from shattered cities, and the Vakari's famous plasma shields flickered weakly, barely holding under the constant barrage. Captain Tom Hales stood on the bridge of the UNS Resolute, his sharp eyes surveying the chaos. Behind him, Colonel Ryan Maddox studied the tactical display, his face grim. "Damn it," Maddox said. "It's worse than we thought. They're barely holding on." Hales's jaw tightened. "Then we'll make sure they hold. Open a channel to the Vakari command." Moments later, the holographic image of Commander Arvon appeared before them. The Vakari leader's once proud demeanor was tempered by exhaustion, his face lined with battle weariness. Still, there was an unmistakable flicker of hope in his eyes as he recognized the human officer. "You came?" Arvon said, his voice laced with disbelief. "We don't leave allies to die," Hales replied firmly. "We're here to help you turn the tide." Arvon's gaze flickered with gratitude, though skepticism remained. "We've held out as long as we could, but our defenses are failing. What can your people offer against the Xanthus?" Hales didn't hesitate. "We bring fresh troops, advanced weaponry, and one thing your people might not expect: adaptability." Arvon nodded slowly. "Very well. We welcome your aid, but time is against us." The humans wasted none of it. As soon as they touched down on Kalos, Hales sent his best engineers, led by Chief Engineer Daniels, to assess the state of the Vakari defenses. Daniels, a wiry man with sharp features and an even sharper mind, immediately set to work alongside the Vakari scientists. The Vakari technology was ancient but powerful, built with a level of craftsmanship the humans had rarely encountered. Still, it was clear the Xanthus had studied these defenses for years and had found ways to exploit their vulnerabilities. Plasma grids that had once seemed impenetrable were now crumbling under the sustained pressure of Xanthus artillery. Daniel surveyed the shield generators, his brow furrowing as he analyzed the readouts. "Your plasma shields are remarkable, but they're designed for short bursts, not continuous bombardment. We can reinforce the energy matrix with our nuclear fusion reactors. Give it the stability it needs to hold." Vakari engineers hesitated, their pride wounded at the thought of outsiders tampering with their sacred technology. Taliner, one of the Vakari's lead scientists, stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "You think your crude Earth technology can strengthen what we've built?" Taliner asked, his tone cool but not dismissive. Daniels met his gaze without flinching. "What you've built is impressive, but it's buckling under pressure. We've faced constant warfare on Earth for centuries. Trust me, we know how to improvise in the heat of battle." There was a long pause before Taliner stepped aside. "Very well. Show us what you can do." With Taliner's reluctant approval, Daniels and his team began integrating human fusion reactors into the Vakari systems. The work was grueling, made more difficult by the looming threat of another Xanthus assault. But within hours, the shields began to stabilize. The Vakari plasma grids, now reinforced with human technology, glowed brighter, the power coursing through them renewed. Meanwhile, Hales and Maddox led the human Marines in coordinating a ground defense. The Xanthus had established a beachhead, with their war machines crawling over the landscape like locusts. Hales knew that if the ground was lost, no amount of shielding would save Kalos. The human Marines, armed with Earth's most advanced railguns and exosuits, took to the field alongside Vakari warriors. Though the Vakari were fierce fighters, their methods were methodical, almost ceremonial. In contrast, the human soldiers were chaotic, adaptive, and ruthless. They used hit-and-run tactics, ambushes, and guerrilla warfare that bewildered the Xanthus invaders, who had expected a straightforward siege. Colonel Maddox personally led a strike team into the heart of a Xanthus forward base, planting demolition charges on their supply lines and crippling their reinforcements. When the Xanthus retaliated, they found the humans had already vanished, their positions booby-trapped and ready to explode. The Vakari, initially wary of these chaotic tactics, soon began to adapt themselves, learning from their human allies. Commander Arvon, watching Hales' Marines from the high ground, could only marvel at their unpredictability. "These humans fight like nothing I've ever seen," Arvon admitted to his second-in-command, Taliner. "Their tactics are disorderly but effective." Taliner nodded, though still somewhat skeptical. "They think on their feet. It's a strength, no doubt, but will it be enough?" Arvon glanced at the now-stabilized shield generators and the Marines pushing back the Xanthus on the front lines. "For the first time in days, it feels like we have a chance." As the day wore on, the battle lines shifted. The human-Vakari alliance pushed the Xanthus back, retaking ground that had seemed lost just hours before. The tide had not yet turned completely, but the Xanthus were no longer advancing. Inside the command center, Hales watched the updated battle maps, his expression unreadable. "We've bought time," Maddox said, stepping beside him. "But it's not over yet." Hales nodded, his eyes fixed on the distant horizon where the Xanthus warship still loomed. "No, it's only just begun." The final Xanthus assault began at dawn. Warships blotted out the sun, descending on Kalos like a dark storm. Their engines roared, shaking the very earth. Below, waves of Xanthus ground forces surged forward, their war machines bristling with weapons, eager to break through the newly reinforced defenses. Captain Tom Hale stood on the front lines, his helmet visor glowing with tactical readouts. Around him, human Marines readied their weapons, while Vakari warriors adjusted their energy blades and plasma rifles. The Alliance, forged in desperation, now faced its ultimate test. "The Xanthus are throwing everything they have at us," Hale said to Colonel Maddox, who stood by his side, scanning the battlefield. "They know if they lose here, it's over," Maddox replied. His voice was calm, but the tension was clear in his eyes. "This is their last push." Commander Arvon, standing tall in his gleaming Vakari armor, approached the two humans. His expression, once stoic and distant, now held a measure of respect. "We stand together now, humans and Vakari. Today, we fight as one." Hales nodded, clasping Arvon's arm in a warrior's grip. "We won't let them take this world." As the Xanthus forces advanced, the skies above erupted in flashes of light. Vakari plasma cannons and human railguns fired in unison, raining destruction on the enemy warships. The combined power of their weaponry tore through the Xanthus lines, ships crumbling in fiery explosions. But the enemy was relentless, and for every warship destroyed, two more took its place. On the ground, Xanthus infantry poured into the fortified Vakari cities. The battle devolved into brutal, close-quarters combat. Hales led the charge, his railgun barking as he gunned down Xanthus soldiers, the human Marines moving like shadows through the ruins of Kalos cities. Vakari warriors, fighting side by side with their human allies, engaged in fierce melee combat, their energy blades cutting through Xanthus armor with lethal precision. The humans fought with a ferocity that stunned even the Vakari. Where the Xanthus expected a disciplined, rigid defense, they found chaos. Hales' Marines shifted tactics on the fly, setting ambushes, flanking enemy positions, and using terrain to their advantage. The Xanthus, for all their numbers and firepower, struggled to keep up. In the midst of the carnage, Chief Engineer Daniels coordinated efforts from the command center, directing reinforcements and managing the critical defense systems. The plasma shields, bolstered by human fusion reactors, held strong, deflecting the worst of the Xanthus bombardment. But Daniels knew it wouldn't last forever. "We're reaching critical power limits on the shields." Daniels shouted into his comms. "If we don't push the Xanthus back soon, we'll be exposed." "We'll hold," Hales replied, firing his railgun into a squad of advancing Xanthus soldiers. "Just keep those shields up." As the battle raged, the humans prepared for a final, desperate gambit. Hales knew that if they didn't take the fight directly to the Xanthus command structure, the relentless assault would eventually overwhelm their defenses. He gathered a strike team of his best Marines and requested support from Arvon's elite Vakari warriors. "Our best chance is to hit their command ship," Hales said, briefing the team. "We take out their leader, and this assault falls apart." Arvon, standing beside him, nodded in agreement. "You have our finest warriors. We will follow your lead." With a swift deployment, Hales' strike team launched toward the Xanthus flagship, using stealth dropships to evade detection. The ship was a behemoth, bristling with weapons and heavily guarded. But Hales' team cut through the defenses with ruthless efficiency. Inside the Xanthus command ship, the atmosphere was tense, the alien soldiers scrambling as alarms blared. Hales, Maddox, and Arvon's warriors moved like ghosts, cutting through the Xanthus crew as they advanced toward the central command deck. The strike was surgical, swift, and deadly. As they reached the command chamber, Hales' team encountered the Xanthus warlord, a towering figure clad in dark armor. The warlord snarled, brandishing a massive energy blade, but Hales met him head-on. The two clashed in a brutal fight, energy crackling around them as they exchanged blows. Hales, though wounded, refused to back down. With a final, decisive strike, he drove his combat knife into the warlord's chest, ending the battle. At that moment, the Xanthus forces on Kalos faltered, their command broken. They began to retreat, disorganized and demoralized. Vakari and human forces surged forward, driving the invaders off the planet. Back on Kalos, Hales, bleeding and exhausted, stood amidst the ruins of the battlefield. Commander Arvon approached, his expression one of awe. "You fought with an unyielding spirit," Arvon said, his voice thick with emotion. "I had never believed humans capable of such resilience." Hales wiped the blood from his face, his gaze hard but resolute. "We don't abandon our allies. Not now, not ever." Arvon inclined his head in respect. "Today, we have forged a bond in blood and fire. The Vakari will never forget." The warships of the Xanthus Empire, once unstoppable, fled into the void, their conquest of Kalos shattered. The Vakari had been saved, not by the Federation they once trusted, but by the unexpected bravery and loyalty of the humans. As Hales and his Marines prepared to return to their fleet, the Vakari warriors saluted them. Humanity, still new to the stars, had proven itself in a way that the galaxy would not soon forget.